Hey guys, it's Cameron from SparkPoint. Today we are going to be walking through the bare-bone essentials of Adobe After Effects. This video is for absolute beginners, people who have never opened Adobe After Effects and just need a quick jumping off point. Let's get into it. When you first open After Effects, the first thing you'll do is click New Project. You'll immediately want to go up to File, Save As, and name your project. It's best practice to save this in a folder where you'll be storing all related files. Go ahead and click Save. So really quickly, I'll walk you through the user interface. Here at the very top is the toolbar. On the left here, we have our project panel where you'll import and store footage, images, graphics, etc. And then in the center here, we have our viewport. This is where you'll view your animations. To the right of that, we have what I call the effects panel. This really is a lot of different things, but I'll just keep it simple and refer to it as the effects panel. And then we have our timeline down here at the bottom where you'll be doing all the heavy lifting. With that out of the way, let's start our first composition. The easiest way is to click New Composition in the middle of the screen here. Once pulled up, name your composition. We'll then select our resolution. For sake of ease, I'm just going to stick with a width of 1920 and a height of 1080. These are the dimensions for standard HD, and we'll set our frame rate to 24 frames per second. Down here we have duration. This is where you'll set the length of your composition. I'm just going to set mine to 10 seconds. The first thing I'm going to do is bring in some images to play with. The easiest way is to pull the files from where they're stored and drag them right over here to the project panel. From here, I can drag these over to my composition. I want my image to be behind my logo that I pulled in, so I'll quickly rearrange these in the timeline so my logo is on top. I also want to resize these a little bit. I can do that with these little handles on the side. Holding Shift as I scale these will allow them to uniformly scale. Now that I've got those positioned where I want them, we can jump down into the timeline and talk about transform properties. Using this little caret icon on the side of each layer, you can drill down and find the transform properties. These properties are the bread and butter of animation inside of After Effects, and every object in your timeline has these same properties. And of course, all of these properties can be animated. I want to first focus on the scale property of my logo. Right now it's set at 75% because we've resized it. 100% would of course be the original size of your image. Anything more than 100% would be bigger, and anything less than 100% would be smaller. So to start off with, I want to animate this logo so it kind of pops into frame. I want it to scale from 0% to 75%, which is what I've got it set to right now. To do that, I have to set some keyframes. You may be familiar with keyframes, but if you're not, follow along closely. It's easiest just to show you and demonstrate how keyframing works. I'm going to move my playhead to about frame 12, and I'm going to come down here and hit this little stopwatch on the scale property. This will enable keyframing on this property and will place a keyframe on the timeline. I'm going to now drag my playhead back to the beginning of my comp, and I'm going to set the scale to 0%. You can now see that another keyframe has automatically been placed on my timeline. Because I changed this property after already setting a keyframe at 75%, it automatically placed a keyframe for 0%. Now if I play this back by pressing the spacebar on my keyboard, you'll see that we now have an animation of this logo scaling up. We've set 2 keyframes and told After Effects we want this scale to go from point A to point B, and After Effects does all the work in between. Now I think I want to retime this animation and make it a little faster. To do that, all I need to do is drag my last keyframe back a little bit, giving these keyframes less time in between each other to animate, resulting in a slightly quicker animation. Now this animation looks a little lifeless as it currently is. I can fix that by easing my keyframes. Easing is a very important aspect of animation inside of After Effects. What will essentially happen is your animation will slowly speed up as it scales and slow back down again before coming to its final scaled position. This makes for a much more natural, smooth looking animation. To ease your keyframes, simply highlight them and press F9. You should see your keyframes have now changed the shape to this hourglass shape. This means that the keyframes are eased. If you play it back, you should now see that the animation appears a bit smoother. Here's a really obvious example of what an animation looks like with and without easing. So now that we've done that, we want to animate this logo off. To do this, we could reverse what we just did, but I actually think I just want to fade it off. I'll bring my playhead to about the 3-second mark. This is about how long I want my logo animation to last on screen essentially. I'll then come over here to our opacity property and click the stopwatch to enable keyframing. I want the fade to last about 10 frames, so I'll move my playhead over just a bit and I'll come back down to my opacity and set it to 0. Now if I back this up a bit and play it, you can see my logo is now fading off. Congratulations, you've just created your first animation. Before we finish up here, I want to talk quickly about the position and rotation properties. So just like the scale and opacity, position and rotation can also be animated. You can see as I drag my logo around the screen here that the numbers next to the position property, the X and Y axis of this logo layer, are changing. This property is what would allow me to move a layer across the screen if I wanted to. To do this, you would follow the same steps as the two properties before. You would set a keyframe at one position and then move your layer to the next position, which would of course automatically create a keyframe. Rotation works the same way. If I come up to my toolbar and grab my rotation tool, I'm able to rotate this logo around in a circle. So you can see how you might be able to start playing around with some of these different properties to create some pretty interesting animations. Now the last thing I'll quickly cover is exporting. To export your animation, you simply have to go to File, Export, Add to Adobe Media Encoder queue. You will have to have Media Encoder installed to do this, and I would recommend doing it this way rather than inside of After Effects itself. Once it's open, go ahead and click the Preset column here. Next to Format, choose H.264, and under Preset, choose Match Source, High Bitrate, and then click OK. Next, click under Output File, and choose a location on your computer where you want to save your animation. You can then press this little green play button over here and your animation will export out. Alright, that's it. Obviously there is so much more to be covered in After Effects, but that should give you enough to at least familiarize yourself with Adobe After Effects. If you found this video helpful, please give us a thumbs up and subscribe, and we'll see you in the next one.